How's it going, everybody? Welcome back for another Emerald City Hockey post-game live from some interesting venues for the two of us here, RJ.
Yeah, I'd say so. I see you're in, it looks like some kind of bedroom, and I am in the studio of Scott Brendan from Cheap Seat Sports. Fun time watching the game with him outside of the press box. Don't usually get a chance to do that. How's it going, Scott?
It's going good. Yeah, it would have been nice if they could have won, but also kind of an important loss in the grand scheme of the future.
Yeah, definitely a lot of that feeling conflicted in chat. I'm sure we will
Yeah.
see. Yeah, between Team Tank
Yes.
and a team maybe want to win one game against the Oilers in the last 9.
It would be nice to have more than 1 point in the last 9 games against the Oilers. I do agree with that. That being said, there were some promising things in this one. The future still continues to look bright for the Seattle Kraken in regards to their young players. So I'm sure we'll have a good time talking about all that. And hey, Kraken at least kept the game close, right? We're kind of back to seeing that effort from the group, and we're seeing the team kind of keep things close there a little bit. Before we jump into chat, of course, want to thank our wonderful sponsor, Queen Anne Beer Hall. RJ, I was able to talk about how much I enjoyed the watch party at the beer hall last post game. You haven't quite had the opportunity to do so. And then also want to remind everybody that we've got that upcoming watch party at their Moss Bay Hall location on April 2nd. But I will let you talk about the great time you had at the last one.
Yeah, and the reason I couldn't talk about it on the last post game is because I was busy having such a great time at the watch party, hanging out with everybody after the game. But it was awesome. Loved getting to chat with people, put some faces to names. That's my favorite part of all of these things, just getting to meet so many of you. And then also, I mean, Queen Anne Beer Hall, just an awesome venue for that sort of thing. The goal light would have been awesome had it had the chance to go off even once. Trust me, I have seen it before. It can happen. But it was also really cool with the long tables and getting to see everyone and the food too. I mean, I got a pretzel. Yeah. Of course, I got to chow down on one of those, and I tried the wings for the first time as well, and I think you did too.
They're good. They're good.
I like wings. I'm not usually a big wing guy, but the lemon pepper, really good.
Yeah, no, they were very good. Looking over here at chat, got a couple super chats to start us off. First one from Sean. Appreciated, Sean, as always. Now, that's the definition of lose fun. Love that Kako Newman Beniers line. Now, RJ, that was a line that I was not really expecting to see. And then it goes out there, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, it was awesome. And you know what? It doesn't surprise me too much watching it because, of course, you have Kako, the big body, but you also have Yanni Newman, who he doesn't have the strength as you've talked about, but he still is kind of a big body in that way. And the shot just seemed to add another dimension to it. And you saw it on that goal where that shot from Newman, it was a power play, but really it was the three of them working together. It was too hot for Skinner to handle. You had both guys crashing the net, and it results in a big goal.
Yeah. What'd you think of it, Scott?
Yeah, I was surprised with how well Newman specifically stepped right up into that line and was kept up with them, and it didn't look out of place. I mean, he's spent most of his time so far with the same guys in the other previous games, and now he comes up and stepped right into that line and didn't look out of place at all.
Yeah, no, I thought he fit in really well with the two of them. I think having Kako still be part of that line, power forward that he is, he can kind of handle that stuff that Yanni Newman's not really quite strong enough yet for. But that goal that you mentioned, RJ, I mean, that was my favorite goal of the game. I'll beat you to it, Striatic, if you haven't already asked the question. Yeah. But that's exactly the kind of stuff that I've wanted to see from this team for so long, RJ, that you and I have both talked about really with them. But it was just so perfect the way Newman's wrister that you and I have seen in person, it is blazing fast, right? And Skinner can't quite handle it. Matty Beniers crashing the goal, gets first look at that rebound, isn't quite able to put it away. Kako comes in for that second effort from the Kraken, is able to score his first one, that one on the power play. Those are the kind of goals that I've wanted to see from the Kraken kind of all along. Those are the goals that I think that they need to score. That was, manufacturing a goal, something that they have struggled a lot with. So I thought that was fantastic to see out there from them.
Yeah, and I thought Kako said it well too in the intermission interview too. We said if you go to those areas of the ice, good things happen.
They do.
Out of that play, Newman came right in on the other side too. So even if Beniers' shot had bounced out to the other side, you had Newman right there. Even after shot dove right down there, get on the other side of it. So
yeah, we'll see if they can maybe keep that mentality more 5-on-5. That would be cool. Doesn't have to just exist on the power play, but 5-on-5 would be fun too. Next super chat here from Light. Good effort loss with kid points. Heck, I'd argue the Kraken were the better team most of the game. Also, the Preds won, so draft position. this is a good game for Team Tank. No doubts about that, all things considered. But, we talk about Yanni Newman and Capo Caco and them working well with Beniers on that line. What did you guys think of Shane Wright getting an opportunity to step up, center in the top 6 with Chandler Stevenson out? Another young guy, looking to maybe make something happen this evening.
Well, he had a couple pretty good chances early on. Neither one of them found the net, but as the game went on, that line didn't seem as noticeable to me. But he's again playing a bigger role and had chances throughout. Just wasn't able to quite get the stick on the puck in a way that we know he can do more often than not. So
yeah, and I think it points to him putting himself in good positions at least. Especially those early chances. You're exactly where you want to be net front. And I know people. This is one of those. I know people are going to point to the ice time with Shane Wright, 15-23 in this game. But looking at the forward ice time, especially 5-on-5, there was a clear top 2 line. It was the Matty Beniers line, which really ended up being the first line because, look at the way they're playing. Of course, you make them the first line. And the Shane Wright's line was a proper second line. And this is one where I'm actually satisfied. I don't always love the ice time figures in the 15-minute range, but Shane Wright played a true top 6 role in this one, and I'm happy with it.
Well, and it was 15 minutes with one line, too, rather than the previous game where sure he's almost 20 minutes, but it's like 3 different lines and all over the place.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, I would take the consistency from this of the line mates and just the consistency in what role he's out there to perform. And I did feel like the Oilers maybe tried to match up against that line a little bit more, at least at the beginning of the game. And then as the game went on, I think that, momentum kind of took things in a different direction with the way that Matty Beniers line was playing. But I do think that Shane Wright came out there and he definitely had some flashes. I think he had some good opportunities, particularly early on. I think that line just kind of, for whatever reason, got a little snake bitten, and then that maybe kind of got to them. And I noticed them a little bit less there in the third period compared to some of the other lines there. Also want to shout out the 4th line for the effort. I know they had their goal taken away, but another great instance of the Kraken crashing the net there. I appreciated that from those guys.
Yeah, and the money puck, I know, Scott, you were looking at that. If you look at the money puck shot map, just describe it for me, Scott.
Yeah, it's very, especially we were looking at it after the first period, and it was just this big clump right around the Edmonton net from Kraken shots, just big old circles bigger the circle, the higher danger of the shot. And then Edmonton's is just this scattering of little dots all over the place. And a lot of that was the 4th line. For as well as the other lines did, as much ice time as they had, it wasn't just once or twice. There was a few times where that 4th line was just all 3 of them going right to the net and creating chaos.
So. Yeah, no, it was great to see. And then Light with the follow-up super chat here. Appreciate both super chats, Light. Also, only 2 more goals to match last season's goal total. I imagine that's for the team wide there, RJ and Scott. Look, this team, obviously scoring was an issue for them last year. It's still at times an issue for them, but they have done a much better job of producing offense this season. And certainly the fact that they're only 2 away from matching last season total would speak to that with 11 games left.
Yeah, bold prediction. I'm gonna say they beat their scoring total from last season. I think they will get it done. You know what? Not too many games against the Minnesota Wild left. I think they're gonna do it. But I think it does set up some interesting conversations that are really more off-season conversations about. We talked about how the Kraken needed to add scoring punch and kind of add to their forward group in the off-season, and it's clear the forward group still isn't good enough. But the goal scoring has been there. It's just been the goals they've allowed, right? You look at a game like this. There've been a lot of high scoring games kind of both ways for the Kraken, and figuring out, is it the defense kind of needing to do too much to balance out the forward group and getting lost behind them? I don't know. It's a bigger off-season conversation, but it doesn't fit the narrative of just the defensemen are great, the goaltending's great, the forwards just aren't good, they can't score.
Yeah, no, that is true. And it's a work in progress, but where last year's team, we were searching for answers as to what didn't work or what was even attempted and why didn't it work, whatever it may be. And what can this team do to address things? It feels like there's more of a foundation to build off of with this season. And yes, I'm assuming, obviously, with you, RJ, that they're going to break the goals total from last season. I don't think they're going to get shut out for 11 games in a row. And I'll knock on wood for that because it is the Kraken. Who knows? But I do think that it's one of those things where you can look at this year's squad and see the young players, see a Yanni Newman, see Shane Wright in his first full season as a Kraken, see Matty Beniers, the addition of a Capo Caco and the way that he's playing, right? And you can look at those players and say, okay, here is the foundation. These guys should take another step forward next season. They should be able to increase their output next season. They should help the rest of the team start producing as they take more and more defensive coverage away from other pieces like an Ellie Tolvanen or Jared McCann, and he can get back to his scoring ways, things like that. And so where last year things felt very uncertain, this year it at least feels like, okay, we're starting to see these glimpses, particularly here late with these young kids getting the playing time like they got tonight. We're seeing the glimpses of what the future is and kind of what the plan is going to be moving forward. And I appreciate that a lot after how we entered last off season. How's it going, Pablo? Hope you're having a good night. 9 losses to the Oilers in a row. Let's go. This is so painful. And RJ, it's not just the losses, it's the hat tricks. They're always getting a hat trick. Somebody's always getting that hat trick.
I know, Scott, we were talking before the game, right, about which player it would be that would end up getting the hat trick. I mean, I think, who did you have? Was it Hyman?
I was thinking Hyman, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, at first I said Corey Perry just because why not? Like, I mean,
yeah.
But
Hyman
was more likely.
I agreed with you and then said, well, maybe Nugent Hopkins just goes full McDavid or something and gets one, but I didn't think that would happen.
Well, he did get 2 of them on the power play, which is pretty McDavid.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, that was tough. Lindsay, yay, no loser points today. Earhead, Team Tank wins, but Edmonton is still pretty darn good without the two-headed monster. Played well, no quit, heck of an effort. And Edmonton did play well without those two players. I mean, you look at some of the goals that they scored, and they were things like the Nugent Hopkins goal on the power play, where it's just like it's an incredible screen in front of Joey Decord. Like he's just kind of got no chance of stopping it. You look at the other Nugent Hopkins goal, I think it was, where it happened to go off Montour's stick, right? Just kind of looked like a pretty innocuous shot, and you're just like, how did Joey miss that? And then on replay, it kind of went in off of Montour there. So there were instances of things like that kind of happening. And yes, Edmonton did prove that at least in games against us, even if they're missing their 2 top players, they can find a way there.
I will say, it felt to me, I don't know what you guys thought, there were definitely times in that game where especially it seemed they were missing Draisaitl, not that they needed him to win, but there were some windows defensively that the Kraken were allowing to make those power moves to the net that Draisaitl in particular likes to make that weren't being made by a Connor Brown at a couple of looks. And well, just the skill wasn't there to take advantage of them in the same way that that was a game where I think Draisaitl could have had a couple, just the way the hole that the Kraken did have there defensively just weren't taken advantage of in the way we've seen the Oilers do in the past.
Yeah, it does feel like, as much as I was just talking about like, hey, there's hope for the future, and we're seeing the foundational building blocks that this team is going to enter the offseason with. I will say defensively, it kind of feels like where we were last season offensively at the end of that season, where there's lots of questions there. You kind of know what the pieces are going to be defensively. Vince Dunn's going to be there. Montour going to re-up Evans, Jamie Alexiak still under contract. Adam Larson's extension is going to kick in. Like, we know who the players are going to be, but are they going to change up systems? Does a full off season with this coaching staff maybe mean that next year they play the system a little bit better? Like, that's where it feels like kind of the mystery or uneven grounds, to stick with my building metaphor, is going to lie for this group heading into the off season.
Yeah, no, I think you're right on that. I mean, you talked about the screens too. Like, credit to the Oilers for playing the type of game that they knew they'd have to play without that high-end talent in the lineup. And it meant going to the net and establishing position there. Wasn't a whole lot of opposition from the Kraken and getting those guys out of those areas. And that's something that's been a problem all season.
Yes,
especially here in the back half. And we were talking earlier too that Vince Dunn in particular has leaned a lot more on the offensive side of the game since things got a little bit more in the dire straits for the Kraken as far as the standings are concerned. And he tried to make up for a lot of their offensive issues in the middle of the season by doing it all himself, which turned into a lot of offense the other way. So maybe you get a fresh start on a new season and Dunn can try and even things out a little bit and be a little more responsible.
No,
And he's not the
I
only one. He's not the only one, but he's the one that's most noticeable.
Yes, yes, definitely. Andrew, young kids doing things, but can't best the Oilers backup squad. Torn. Freddie, I'll take that loss. Fun game. I think I'll take a game like this. I mean, this was a fun game for me. It was an enjoyable one to watch. Like I felt like the Kraken were in it. They kept trying. They were trying to match the Oilers scoring throughout this one. Again, maybe it's just because it's kind of a low bar with this team, but I will take games like that kind of each and every game. Cruel and unusual things are being done to Joey's save percentage lately, and I don't appreciate it. And I feel like this is kind of what we were just talking about with the defense.
Yeah, I mean, and it's really a lot of these not Joey's fault. I mean, I felt really bad for him on that one that went off Montour's stick, and in there's zero chance on that, but also on the screens as well. I think it's a matter of look, if this is the kind of defense that Joey had in front of him, I do think for a lot of the season, but it feels like there are a few more goals that he really can't do anything about. And I think, maybe that's a narrative that we kind of need to start talking about too, is just how many Kraken mistakes Joey Decord covered up when he was playing elite level hockey. And he is still playing very well. Like, he's not playing poorly, but I think he's a little step down from that elite level. And maybe it's because he's tired, because they've done everything they can to burn him out. But it just feels like everything required him to be playing at the very tip top of NHL level goaltending. And now that he's even a little bit below that, it's getting exposed, and not just him, but the whole team.
And there's a lot of those. We've seen a lot of the fluky ones recently too. I mean, the one-off Montour stick in this game, but the Bedard one off Larson's leg in the Blackhawks. So there's been a few of those where it's just like, what are you gonna do? It's just it's hockey.
The luck,
yeah,
the luck is
it's
definitely regressing.
At the same time.
Yeah, the luck is definitely regressing a little bit for Joey Decord. But yes, I mean, it does feel like, earlier in the season there were defensive issues, and we certainly talked about them, but it does feel like lately we're seeing more situations where there's just kind of wide open gaps for other teams to exploit. I look at the Jeff Skinner goal tonight, right? Like, Jeff Skinner being left wide open in the slot there, where he can just kind of receive a puck, not only receive the puck and then get a shot off, but he also has time to move to center himself even more and take like half a step forward and then get that shot off. You kind of just can't have that happen at the NHL level, right? Like, you're going to get scored on if those are the chances that you're letting your goaltender have to face. And so that's just kind of where we're at. Amanda appreciates losing fun, though. Virginia, good, solid loss. We never gave up. Love seeing Capo and little Yanni clicking. El Bell, hard to be upset by that. The new lines look good, and a few of the young guys got points. Fox Leader, though, I do think hits on something. I know it's better for the future, but losing to the Oilers sucks. It does, and it unfortunately happens way too often. And then Lindsay wanted the Kako hat trick, but glad he got two. That breakaway was sick. How about that play, guys, right? Capo Kako steps up into the passing lane. He's able to get a piece of the puck. It bounces then over to Yanni Newman, who's then able to send it up. But way to job for Capo Kako to step up into that passing lane, get a piece of it. And then once he's gotten a piece of it, he just starts skating up the ice.
Yeah, and for Newman to find him with the pass between a couple of Oilers players on either side, it wasn't a wide open passing lane for him to hit necessarily, to hit Capo in stride to where he could then take off, and then the move at the end of it too. That last little
sweet.
second to the backhand and chip in. Maybe he'll get a shootout attempt next time that rolls around.
I was thinking that too. I like the Kraken have very few players who can make that move work and do it as smoothly as Capo Kako did. But I'd like to see that in the shootout. I think Jamie Alexiak is one of them. That's neither here nor there.
We're still waiting for the all defenseman shootout.
But if they're not going to go with that, I think Kako has more of a chance of actually getting the nod in the shootout.
Yes, definitely. And I like that you brought up the play from Yanni Newman there, Scott, because that's a good example of kind of what I talked about last post-game live with some people, with Yanni Newman starting to look more comfortable at the NHL level. He's starting to keep his head up a little bit more. He's starting to put himself in spots where he can kind of create and take advantage of situations like that. That only happens with him really having an awareness of kind of where everybody's at in that situation and him being able to make that play. I don't think during that first homestand, Yanni Newman makes that play, but he makes that play now. And that's certainly exciting to see for the future. Right, RJ?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing the growth in him just every single game, it feels like. And it's nice because that Minnesota game, I feel like there are a lot of guys that didn't really show up or move the needle. I mean, the Wild just kind of beat the Kraken into submission, right? But to see it in a game like this, it lets me know that the direction is, it's heading in the right direction, I guess.
Well, but
Yeah.
4 points now in 5 games for him.
I mean, that's
Yeah,
impressive just on its surface. Yeah.
It is pretty good, not gonna lie. Lots of love for having Scott on the post game. So just want to say thanks to everybody for that. And Andrew, RJ surprise Pikachu face better be on the next Cheap Seat Sports thumbnail. So there you go, Scott. You're gonna have to make that happen.
We'll make something happen.
Yeah.
Yes.
We got a couple super chats here too.
Super chats. Yep. I was just gonna get to those. First one from Dave. Big super chat. Appreciate it, Dave, as always. Yo, everyone. I lucked out with work where I was able to take tonight off and where I could watch the game and tune in live on the post game. Absolutely love seeing Shane on the first line. Afra and Judy need treats for this. That's true, they do, and I could definitely get them to be a part of this. I don't know that I could make the treats happen up here, but I'll try to get them in here. But more love for Shane Wright on the first line.
Yeah, I mean, it's great to see him there. I mean, he was listed on the first line on the broadcast. And I do wonder what the plan would have been with him, just usage-wise, had the Beniers line. Oh, there's Afra. Hi, Afra. Yes.
Judy's sleeping behind her. It's 10. It's past their bedtime.
Yeah, that's true. I think they would stay up for treats, though.
Yes. Oh, Afra got a treat. She stole a steak off the counter earlier, so she's been treated plenty. She's been treated plenty this evening.
Treat yourself.
All right, Afra's way ahead of you there, Dave.
Definitely, but appreciate the super chats, Dave, and I'll make something happen for her later for sure. Sorry I can't do it on stream here in Tacoma. And then Burnt Creme with the super chat, appreciate it. To play Edmonton without the two best players in the world, and Kraken looks so out of sort. I don't get the optimism. Edmonton outplayed and showed different in talent. I think the optimism comes from the fact that you in essence only had like one line really consistent and able to drive a lot of possession in this one, but it was one line with significant pieces of the future, right? It's Matty Beniers, Capo Caco, and Yanni Newman. One of those pieces has only played a handful of NHL games up until this point. And so for that line to do as well as they did, and I don't know, I haven't looked at like Money Puck, I don't know like how much they actually drove possession from like an expected goals share standpoint, but for them to look as comfortable as they did, I thought Matty upped his game from a speed standpoint in this one. I think having the size of both of those players on each side, knowing that he had somebody with the shot of Yanni Newman off on one of his wings, I think kind of changed how he played a little bit from what we're used to seeing of him with Capo Caco and Jaden Schwartz, where it's more so like, I have to be the shooter, I have to get it to the net, and then they're going to be net front and they can maybe handle that. I thought Matty was kind of starting to enter more of a playmaking mindset in this one, where it was, hey, let me enter the zone with it, and then I can send it over to this guy who has a good shot. Kind of takes me back to what we saw from him at the beginning of the year when he had Jordan Eberle and Jared McCann, two shooters on his wing then. I do think that this is kind of better for Matty. As much as I've enjoyed watching him with Jaden Schwartz, I do feel like him having somebody that he trusts their shot and that he wants to set them up and put them in a spot where they can rip one and score. I do feel like that is better for Matty long term to develop some of that playmaking, and then we can eventually see some of that production that we've kind of always hoped to see from him.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons for optimism too, is we're seeing another configuration that can work in the future potentially for the long term. But I do want to say, Burnt Creme, I completely understand where you're coming from, because look, if this was earlier in the season, your way of thinking is kind of what I'm usually aligned with here. And I do think that Edmonton without McDavid, without Draisaitl, they might even be a bottom 5 team in the league. I mean, this was a gutsy effort from them, but they're not a very good team without those two guys. They really need them in the lineup. And so if this was an early season game, I would absolutely be laying into them about how this was a missed opportunity. You need to pick up the 2 points here against an Oilers team and take advantage of this opportunity. But we're at the point in the season where the wins and losses don't really matter. In fact, the wins hurt you in the long term. And so that's why I think we're kind of overlooking this a little bit and have made that adjustment to look at, okay, how are the young guys doing? How are the indications of the future doing? And again, I'd be right there with you if the game was meaningful in the sense of the standings, where the Kraken could still make the playoffs, but it's just an adjustment of expectations.
This was a game where they're going in trying to do anything they can to win. They're not putting Newman on the first line. I mean, they called Shane Wright's line the first line, but the Beniers line still ends up with by a little bit the most ice time as a line together. They're not putting a guy in his 5th NHL game on the wing of the first line, and that's definitely something. And I mean, I'm just glad to see them giving Newman that kind of a look in his 5th NHL game and trying something that maybe is something they'll look at next season if things go well for Newman in training camp and he does make the team next year. That's now they have something to look at, some film of an NHL game against a team going to the playoffs, even if they don't have their 2 best players.
Yes, it is yes, there is no denying that, like, looking at this and drawing on the optimistic parts is very much looking at this game through rose tinted glasses, right? Like I will definitely give you that, Elbel. Like, if we are looking at it straight up, yeah, the fact that I just kind of went and checked Money Puck. I mean, those lines got caved in, right? Like, completely. The fact that Edmonton was able to do what they did. There's that one point in the second, Darnell Nurse skates through like 4 Kraken players, right? And it's only because Darnell Nurse can either deke through a whole team or finish that he chose the first part and decided not to score the goal there. But like, there were plenty of instances of things really not looking good for this team. We talked about the defense. I mean, we didn't really shred it the way that we realistically could if we wanted to talk about the defense. I mean, Brandon Montour was kind of never back in time because he was pressing up the ice so much. Vince Dunn, to a lesser degree, I felt like was in that same category. Another really rough game for Riker Evans, who is just not moving his feet at all. You look at the amount of gaps that he is leaving in the defensive zone right now is astonishing. Just just letting guys have shooting lanes that should not exist at the NHL level. Like, there is plenty to say that would
Sorry,
would
one
make
more
this
thing,
game.
like, as a 5-man unit, they couldn't handle a basic cycle so many
They
times.
couldn't at all. No, this is what I'm saying. Like, defensively, there was a lot of issues. The forward group back checking, there was a lot of issues. Like, I definitely don't want to say like, oh, this was a great game by any stretch. I think it's one of those, though, where, yeah, this point of the season, it's nice to kind of lean on and appreciate the young guys doing what they're doing. I do think that it's nice to focus on them and look at that optimistic side of things. But yes, I'm not trying to actively ignore all of the issues that this team very much still has, and that is why they are in a spot where they're at. That being said, I also feel like for games, given kind of how bad that they played in this one, the fact that they only lost by 1 is still pretty impressive, and we haven't seen that too often this season.
Well, the defensive end things, you do have 4 by ice time. 4 of your top 5 forwards in ice time were the 3 or the 4 young guys in that top
Young
6
guys,
this
yeah.
time. The defensive end, I mean, aside from what we've seen from Beniers early in his career, the defensive end is typically the thing that comes around. They get used to a little bit. It takes a little longer to come into play. So you've got, Wright,
And
Beniers, Kakko, and Newman, 4 of your top 5 forwards in ice time. You're going to have some defensive issues.
yeah, but it is one where at some point they need to get these reps. They need to get top 6 reps. They need to go up against top competition. I know they don't have McDavid and Draisaitl, so they're not going up against them, but they're still going up against, some legit NHL players out there, Zach Hyman, Jeff Skinner, those kinds of guys. So it is one of those, like, at some point that has to happen, and it's not always going to be pretty when it does. This time of year, when the stakes are as low as possible, is the time to do it. Dave with another super chat. Really appreciate it, Dave. Don't forget to like the live stream, my fellow Krakens.
Yep,
Appreciate it.
And I do
Appreciate
think,
it.
real quick, I think, like, right below it here from Sean at the bottom of the chat, though, like, it kind of follows up on what we were just talking about, though. Are you at least a little concerned, like, need new players concerned about how abysmal the defense has been this season? And I mean, I have advocated in some of the Armchair GM streams for maybe a bigger shuffle on the blue line. I think it's something the Kraken certainly should look into. And I know it's more of an off-season conversation, but like, these are the type of games that really should mean, I think, the Kraken shouldn't be too attached to any individual one of their blue liners. Maybe
Yeah,
aside from
and
his son.
yes, and I see this chat here from Matt from earlier in chat. The defensive structure on this team in the defensive end and in the neutral zone is so bad. I'd rather watch a 90s trap than whatever the Kraken are trying to run right now. That is saying something, because that was some abysmal hockey to watch from some of those teams. Florida in the 90s, are you kidding me? That was like unwatchable. They were playing defense. But I do think that the key thing in there is in the neutral zone. because the games that we see this team really back check hard, the forward group back check hard, and we see that neutral zone defense from the team, everything seems to work out, right? Like it kind of fixes a lot of the problems. The games that we don't see that neutral zone back check, they're games like this, right? Where kind of everything falls apart. I do think that, yes, the defense, both, and I mean both defenseman and 5-man unit forward group in the defensive zone, absolutely needs to be better. I have highlighted several times throughout the course of the season what the forwards could be doing or should be doing in the defensive zone that would make a lot of these problems kind of go away. But I do think that this team has had to deal with a lot of situations, whether it's odd man rushes or just other teams moving up the ice with speed and then them being caught on their back foot and never really being able to settle in the defensive zone, that could have been fixed if they were either defenseman wise more aggressive in the neutral zone or forward wise more aggressive about getting back on the back check through the neutral zone.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing against the Oilers too, where normally you have to be very careful about them building speed through the neutral zone, and you can get burned if you're a defenseman that's a little more aggressive. McDavid will skate right around you. Draisaitl will make you look silly. Not an issue they really had to worry about tonight, but they didn't play like it.
Yes, definitely. Edward, game before the watch party, 6 Kraken goals. Game after the watch party, 4 Kraken goals. Watch party, 0 Kraken goals. You don't have to tell us, Edward. And
Yep.
I know
I know you know, Edward. You were there, yeah.
Yes.
At least you got a bobblehead out of it.
It was probably a lot harder to fall asleep watching that game at the beer hall than it was on a couch, because that game got pretty dull.
That is true. That is true. And then Bert Dylan is always so kind. Once he didn't look snake bit to me, didn't have a good game in that role. I do think that Shane actively got worse as the game went on, right? Like he was snake bit early on when he had his chances, and then, like I said earlier, kind of just disappeared as the game went on. And we even saw it seemed like Dan was maybe not giving him as many chances in the third period as well. Like I'm with you on that one.
Yeah, and I'm all for giving Shane more ice time generally, but I never have a problem with the coach rewarding good play in a game and maybe scaling back players who aren't having their best game.
Yeah, no, especially when the game is close like this one. Like that's that's what coaches have to do,
And he is coming off a back-to-back, which were his 2 highest ice time games in his career. So he might have a little more tired legs than some of the other, even with 2 days off. But
yes. Daniel, do they not have goalie interference challenges in the AHL? What was Hayes doing there? That was kind of my thought too. Hayes came in pretty hot there into the crease, eh, boys?
Yeah, he sure did. I mean, Scott, you kind of saw it right off the bat there, as far as that one maybe not counting.
Yeah, it was, as soon as they went to challenge, you kind of knew that one was coming back. So they show the replay, and it's pretty clear. He comes in there, puts his skate right into the 5-hole, and then just pushes him down.
And the rule is too that you can push the puck into the net, but you can't push the puck in with the goalie. And I think that's pretty clearly what Hayden did, pushing Skinner back into the net when he came in there, and so that seemed like a pretty easy call to me.
Yeah,
and I'm happy to see not many people complaining about it too. I haven't seen too many on social media or in our channels or anything.
No, because it was obvious once the correct replay was given.
Yes, that's true. It took the right angle, because after the first few angles on the broadcast, I thought, actually, no, I think this might stand. And then they actually showed a good angle, and
just how did Skinner fall over? Because
it
was one, because the original.
They put out another.
Apparently, they didn't like that overturned call very much.
Yes. But yeah, that it's been a thing, right? Like, just give us that angle from the beginning. It does feel like at times, I've complained about this in arena, but it does feel like at times on the KHN broadcast as well, they're like trying to shelter us from showing us that the Kraken actually did something bad. It's like, no, just show us that, instead of like getting our hopes up or having us get upset over how this call goes, and then you immediately show us the angle that you had all along that showed that the Kraken did in fact earn that infraction.
And Kara's saying too, they actually don't have video review for goalie interference in the AHL, so he would have gotten away with that.
Yes, and I also did like Mason. My guess on the thought process is there's so many people around the net who will see this, right? Like that is legitimate too, given the crowd that was around Stuart Skinner there. I definitely understand that.
Yeah, the AHL might not have that camera looking straight down, so.
No, probably not. Certainly not if they're going to give us ice time. They probably shouldn't give us video reviews on goalie interference calls either. Fusion Mix, I just remember how the Firebirds would constantly have guys all around their net and be unable to clear them. And it's a little worrisome to see how that's carried over here. I mean, look, Dan is kind of running the same thing that he ran with the Firebirds down there. And it is one where if you are running that 2-3 zone and your D1, who is supposed to be aggressive and go challenge the puck carrier, gets caught out there, right, and tangled up with the puck carrier, often say the corner or up closer to the half boards, all of a sudden you only do have one defenseman at home. If the puck gets moved to the net front pretty quick there, if your forwards aren't active and aware and knowing that they have to be back and get to that net front, especially that weak side winger, you can run into a situation where the other team can have two players kind of get up on that one defenseman net front pretty quick. And it does feel like that has happened a couple times this year for sure.
Yeah, and I think too, the Kraken just also don't have a lot of defensemen. They have one defenseman who I think is both big and physical. That's it.
Yes, you would think you would be able to find one of those. We'll see. And for especially you, RJ, but for everybody else, Filio Tavainen, right? Another big guy. He is maybe more physical than Jamie Alexiak, but I don't think I would label physicality as one of like the top 2 or 3 things that I would say with his game. So, I do think, like, as somebody that we've very much talked about, maybe making that step up to the Kraken next season, I don't know that we're going to get like kind of that additional physicality from him, but it does feel like they do need one more guy that can be really physical on the back end that can punish an opposing team from getting to the net front, from parking themselves in front of Joey Decord. Felt like Adam Larson kind of used to be that guy. It feels like he's a little less of that guy now. And there's just really nobody else to kind of step up and fill that void right now for them. Josh Mahura can be good. He can be physical, but he's better in more of his hits anywhere are better in a more open ice place than it is from like moving bodies and traffic away from the net front. I think that is something that they're going to need to invest in if they're going to keep this system and structure, especially having 3 puck moving defensemen like they do.
Right. And Burnt Krem saying, trying to figure out who that defenseman is. I was referring to Adam Larson, but people do mellow as they age, it seems.
Yeah.
At least lately, it seems like Dunn is rubbed off on Larson more than the other way around, with Larson diving into plays offensively. And it's fun to watch, but it does mean that there's then nobody
thought
back
about that. That's good.
Yes, that is.
We certainly saw last year. It seemed like Dunn was like Larson was starting to rub off on Dunn a little bit. He's put more defensive responsibility, and now Larson's like, you know what, this offensive thing's kind of fun. Let's just do that, and then you have nobody back.
Yes, that is true. Daniel, RJ has been on Mitch Levy's podcast before towards the end of seasons. He'll do a segment called Mr. Playoffs if Seahawks are in the playoff hunt, or Mr. Draft if they're not. Any chance we can get updated draft standings during the post game? So RJ, is it or Scott, is it possible to pull up maybe a Tankathon?
Yeah.
I don't know if Tankathon updates right away.
Let's see if they. So I know with
there.
this game, we had Philadelphia picked up a point today. They lost in overtime. Dallas took an incredibly long 9 seconds to beat them in overtime today.
Yes.
Yeah, what are they waiting for?
I know,
5
right?
seconds extra? Yeah.
And then, as it was already pointed out earlier, that Nashville beat the Leafs. So that was a good one. So Nashville picks up 2 points. Flyers pick up a point. Then the Kraken are now 5 points ahead of Nashville and Buffalo. Nashville has 2 more games to play than the Kraken do, and Buffalo has 3 more games to play than the Kraken do. And I think they're now tied with Philadelphia. I'm getting it up right now. Tied with Philadelphia.
Same games played.
But
the Kraken have
for the 5th spot.
Yeah, the Kraken have more regulation wins, so they're lower in the draft order. The Flyers, I guess, have the draft tiebreaker on the Kraken and probably will continue to have it.
So
that feels a little safe.
Yeah. And the Kraken do have, I just took a quick look at it earlier today. It seemed to me the hardest schedule of that clump of 4 teams left. And I guess also of note, Pittsburgh won yesterday, and that's kind of the next team past Philadelphia. So they had a good run there. They had a run of wins there for a little bit. They kind of dropped them, but now some of those other teams are winning, and they've gotten a couple losses here against teams that didn't even have their best players. But
yeah, for as much as we've really been tracking it and as close as everybody's been, there hasn't actually been that much movement from anybody, just kind of up or down that much. They've all kind of managed to mostly stay where they're at. Appreciate the super sticker there from Dave as well. Want to mention that. Really appreciate all of it tonight, Dave. Is very, very generous of you.
Yeah, thank you, Dave. Really appreciate that. I love seeing the super chats, the super sticker, and Scott, you were giggling at something. What was that?
So I went to look at what the last 10 were for some of those. Philadelphia might be a team to watch. They're currently 1-8-1 in their last 10. So
ooh, they're trying hard.
the 1 point they picked up today was a rarity in their recent games.
They didn't even really sell off at the deadline either. Like that's just them.
No.
Yeah, I think the Torts message might be wearing off a bit.
I was gonna say, and we know with them, it's their goaltending.
Yeah, that's true. They cannot get a save. Worst goaltending in the league.
Yeah. James, is the Beniers, Wright, Kako, Newman ice time, from this game, a message from management that the other quote unquote original Kraken are nearing their end on the team? Is this the teams trying to send a message, RJ, or is it just them trying to get the young guys ice time when, again, these games aren't as, meaningful to the overall picture?
I think it's probably the latter. I think it's just wanting to get the young guys ice time. I don't think a message really has to be sent to that veteran core that can't be more effectively sent in the off season by shipping out the ones that you're going to ship out. I think really that's the change that needs to be made, is you really need to identify, okay, who do we want around here of the veteran core and who do we not, and make moves accordingly. And I think once you do that, the rest of them will kind of catch on that, hey, these young guys are coming to take your spots. And if you don't work hard, if we keep seeing disappointing results, you're probably going to be out of here. So I think, any message to be sent would happen in the off season, and you do it via your actions, not, ice time in late season games.
Well, until this front office shows that they're willing to start buying some contracts out, it's not like the veteran guys that are at least under contract are going to feel too threatened. Which
that is true.
That's a different discussion, but
yes. Daniel, the Firebirds have lost 5 straight. Are they comfortably in their playoff spot? Maybe Newman needs to go back. So just because I keep recording Firebirds games for the prospect chat on Monday, so we could all watch a Firebirds game together. And boy, it just feels like I'm in Groundhog Day recording the same 2-1 loss over and over and over with this team. It's not just the fact that Yanni Newman is up or John Hayden is up with the Kraken right now. It is also that they're dealing with some other injuries to some key players there. That being said, I do think that taking away guys like a John Hayden, like a Yanni Newman, and really I think it was they're now without 4 of their top 5 power play goal scorers. So the power play is a mess just because of injury or guys being up with the Kraken and stuff. A lot of their goal scorers are either hurt or up with the Kraken, but there are some things that I definitely I'm kind of looking at, and I'm like, okay, it's really showing the places where a lot of the prospects for the Kraken kind of still need to improve and grow and develop before they're going to be ready to join the Kraken in whatever capacity they're going to be able to join the Kraken. Because, look, Yanni Newman is up with the Kraken, but otherwise, a lot of the injuries that are significantly impacting the Firebirds right now are the AHL veteran guys. It's not the young players, right? It's the young players are actually the ones getting a significant amount of playing time here. And as you pointed out, Daniel, they have lost 5 straight. They are averaging, it seems like, a goal a game. And even that is a struggle at times, and they've really got to fight for it. And so I do think that it's kind of a good look that, despite the fact that we have a highly rated prospect system, despite the fact that we have lots of guys to be excited about and everything, it is a good showcase for just how long it does take players to develop and turn into players that can then participate and then ultimately produce at the NHL level. It is not as quick and easy for, say, a Jagger Fergus or Edward Chalet to step into the AHL from the CHL and just kind of carry over that production and have those results. It is still something that they have to work at and go through those processes to kind of come back and grow and learn the lessons that they need to learn. And I think that that's what we're seeing right now with the Firebirds. It's just kind of on full display that, this is very much a developing team right now.
And thankfully, though, a playoff berth isn't really in question. It seems like top 7 teams from the Pacific Division make it. Coachella Valley at 5, and they've got a 10-point lead on the team in 8th. So that looks pretty safe. As far as
although they
making it,
were,
we'll see how far they go. Yeah.
They were top 2 there not that long ago. So it was, it has been a little bit of a fall for them, but they should be okay. Edward, what was with that overhead camera on that goalie interference review? Maybe it was just my feed, but the picture quality on that camera was noticeably worse. On the other hand, it was like a glimpse into an alternate world where the Kraken had joined the league in the 90s. I didn't really notice the quality being that bad on that overhead. Maybe that was just Edward's feed.
It was a little
but this
grainy for me.
Okay, but this does bring up the thing that I thought was funniest all season long. The Kraken have obviously had various pregame intros at CPA this season. We're, I think, on intro 3 right now for the season. And the first one with the whole bar setup before transitioning to the ship and following the bar patrons kind of journey there. The thing that I always talked about and I loved was all of the Kraken highlights on the old bar, like CRT TVs. And I was just like, the Kraken have existed only in a reality in which that would be a flat screen, like 4K display. Yes. Instead, we're watching them on like a CRT TV with like a built-in VHS player. I'm just like, it just doesn't look right.
They did have the one game last year where half the lights went out at CPA, and it looked like a game lit from. We can go back to the 50s with only half the lights up against that game against the Rangers. So.
That is true. James asking the question, how long will Newman stay up? Just a few more games so he stays.
Yeah.
No,
we do have a super chat from Dave that we've been waiting on a bit, so I want to get. What is your dream off-season trade?
RJ, Mr. Armchair GM.
Yes. No, I'll gladly start off with this. I mean, my initial instinct was just David Pastrnak I'm going with my dream trade here. David Pastrnak, aside from McDavid for a 7th or something, Yeah. David Pastrnak for basically whatever it would cost to acquire him. If futures, let's say the Bruins are trying to just rebuild, tear the whole thing down. Massive package of futures for David Pastrnak, something that doesn't include Shane Wright, but just about everything else I'd say would be on the table. That'd probably be my dream move. I mean, you could throw Kirill Kaprizov as another player in there if the Wild felt they had to move him, if he became available. Matt Barzal would be another good one. I bet he could be acquired a little cheaper if the Islanders decided they wanted to tear things down. You have the futures to do that. Just a difference-making forward, a proper difference-making forward for whatever it would cost to acquire them. And I see Julia saying Pettersson, high risk, high reward. I wouldn't hate it.
It depends on what you would have, what the trade is there. There is some risk there with the way this season has gone for him. So if it's go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off there, Scott. I was just going to say, Pettersson doesn't feel like as much of a dream trade, right? As more of like, we settled for the trade that could actually exist in reality.
Now, I do like the idea of the dream there where he comes here and then bounces right back to his elite form.
That's the dream, yeah.
Oh,
you get the Canuck player by him at his lowest. As he's on the way out, the Canuck fan base is turning on him. He comes here and then just lights fire and goes back to 100+ point per season. That's where the dream is the Canuck player to come to just down the road and flip his career around.
That's where the dream comes in. I guess also, if the Canucks retain money, then we enter dream territory as well.
Yeah, with that term, that'd be kind of crazy. That would enter dream territory for sure.
That's definitely when we kind of hit that next level there. James, how long will Newman stay up? Just a few more games so he stays under the number to stay a rookie next year? Kind of asking the question. We've talked in the past, RJ, no worries about like burning a year of his ELC. That year is getting burned regardless. He is not slide eligible. So this year is coming off of his contract anyway. But keeping rookie status for next season is something that could potentially still be on the table for him. I'm giving you a second to look up the number because I don't remember offhand what it is. It's like, isn't it like 26 games?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Of course, Viren got in here with chat and said the cutoff is 25 games played in one season or 6 in 2 different years.
That's about right.
with how many games left, I don't think he can hit that.
I don't think he can get there.
He
So
didn't get here soon enough.
yeah, so he should be fine for rookie status next year, and he can go out there and try to compete for a Calder. So no worries on that. Even if he's here.
Yep.
Yes.
And then super chat, another one from Dave. Another super chat.
Wow,
from Dave.
Dave.
Yeah. Wow, Dave. Did anyone notice the microphones and how everything sounded on the ice? I mean, during some of the scrums, you could kind of hear what the officials were saying a little bit.
Yeah, could you? I had to watch the first 2 periods on mute, so I didn't
Okay.
hear anything. I unfortunately, Dave, no idea what you're talking about for that. But I mean, we've had some moments like that this year, and it does feel like kind of barn to barn. There's also a difference in that. And last time they were in Edmonton, we were doing our live game commentary. So again, wasn't really listening to the audio, but it would not surprise me if in Edmonton, maybe they've just got some, it's a little bit more mic'd up.
They
The
seemed
rink
a little
there.
more active than usual to me personally. I don't know if you
I
agree
didn't
with
notice
that,
it
Scott.
much.
Okay. But I mean, my favorite moments have been, I mean, Scott, you probably remember this when we were at Climate Pledge, and it's happened, what, 2 or 3 times this
There's
season
been a lot of live mics this season.
where the
more
ref's mic gets caught on.
Yeah, more so than the previous years. Like a noticeable amount more live mics this season from the refs.
Yeah.
So,
And so, and
Yes.
you know, we don't cheer up in the press box, of course. We can't
We
do
would
that.
never.
But cheering for some interesting language on a live mic from the ref, that might be something we might have all stood up and rooted for a little bit.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. That has definitely happened. Let's see. And then, James is asking that the difference on being eligible for rookie status and not burning a year on the ELC. Kind of maybe more or less answered in chat, but just to kind of just get it out there for anybody who's just listening to the audio or watching the VOD tomorrow morning before chat is up there. The difference is the ELC is all contract based, that, if they're under a certain age, the age being like 20, they can play up to 9 games during an NHL season. And then if they are sent back down to their major junior team, say, that year of the contract gets slid to the next year. So if the entry level contract is 3 years, that's the rookie contract, that year doesn't get burned off, right? They still have 3 years left on that ELC moving forward, despite the fact that they played 9 games in the NHL that season. So that's what the ELC slide is. As far as being rookie eligible, that really only matters for things like being Calder eligible, which is the Rookie of the Year trophy. And that is a different, bar, as we just talked about. It's a different thing altogether. One is totally contract based. The other is kind of awards based.
Yep. Well done. Good explanation there, Dylan.
I still know a thing or two. Do you think Evans will get extended from Brook?
Yes, it's extremely likely Evans is going to get extended. The Kraken will do that probably in the off season. It's just a matter of, if it's shorter term or longer term. I guess the most likely way that he wouldn't be is if he was involved in some kind of large trade package for maybe a difference making forward or something, and he's someone another team would want.
Right. And James saying Evans has been pretty dang bad the second half of this season. What are your guys' thoughts on his development this year? I think it's been a substantial step back. Does he have a spot in our future? I know Dan has pushed back on the idea of, hey, this is his first full NHL season. Is he just kind of hitting a rookie wall, so to speak, in that regard? And I know Dan has said, no, it's his, third full pro season, so that's not as big a thing. But it does feel like the second half of the season has been, not only noticeably worse for Riker Evans, but he is really like borderline unplayable at this point. We've talked about the idea of scratching him. I'm kind of surprised we haven't seen more action on that front. We saw him scratch for that one game. It hasn't changed my opinion on him as a player as far as like the Kraken should extend him. I do think that he can be a valuable piece for them moving forward. But I do think that it's one of those things where when you start talking about, him as that kind of next puck mover in the system that maybe makes a Montour, more realistically a Vince Dunn, expendable in a trade, it really makes me second guess that.
Yeah, the high end upside is really where I start to wonder about that. I think he can still be a good top 4 defenseman kind of longer term for you. And I do wonder if maybe Ron Francis might be second guessing a longer term deal at some bigger money, just given the recent run of play. but I still think the organization is probably higher on him and his development than just about anybody else. They took the risk to draft him as an overager, and I think he probably wasn't ranked as high as he ended up being drafted, but that seemed to pay off. A lot of guys around him, didn't necessarily make it as far. And just Francis also has a history of drafting defensemen and signing them while they're young to these long-term contracts that end up looking like steals if they develop well. So I wonder if he's also kind of thinking that way too.
Get him for a little bit less from this. Get him for a lower.
Could be a heck of a bargain.
Yeah, get him for a lower AAV with still the same term, just without.
Yeah.
And the one thing I'll say on the scratching is I personally, I mean, maybe you feel different. I feel like the reason we haven't seen him scratched as much is just because of the time of year where this is happening. We did see him for the one game, and that was kind of the message send. But versus like Shane Wright earlier in the year, those 3 games, but that's still at a point in the season where the Kraken, from a wins perspective, couldn't afford to have a guy playing the way that Wright was in the lineup at that point. So if this is happening at the start of the season, we probably see some more significant cuts in Evans playing. But now it's like, just let him figure it out on the ice, because what's the worst he can do? Get them less points in the standings? Fantastic.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. Daniel asking, didn't we lose an assistant D coach that was really good working with the young guys when we moved on from Haxtell? And I see Zoe, mentioning it was Leach, and he works for the Bruins now, Jay Leach. Yes, but we did bring in Bob Woods, who's worked with many young defensemen that have gone on to become very successful. Shea Theodore, John Carlson, Washington, and Brock Faber last year. So still somebody there that should be able to kind of help with that development for the young guys on the blue line.
Yeah, it shouldn't be too much of a change. And I know the guys had glowing words about Jay Leach, but the Bruins defensively haven't been quite as good this season either. And we were pointing to maybe that potentially being part of the reason why, as we got a couple super chats here too.
Yeah, I don't know why I'm not getting any notifications for them.
You want me to read
at all? So no, I've got them here. First one from
Okay.
JTB Hockey. Appreciate it. In theory, could we truly see the Kraken make a move for Pasta or Kreider in the offseason, or make a move for Zegras to add to the youth movement? I think the Pasta one is the most like, it really depends on Boston. I think realistically, Boston's going to try to retool around Pasta. I don't know that Pasta is going to be on the market there. So from a, could we really see that? That one is like the 5% or lower chances
Very
of happening.
unlikely.
Yeah. A Kreider move, I don't know that Kreider really adds that much. Like, he adds the power forward nature to this team, but I feel like you basically made that move with Capo Caco, only you got a younger player with, potentially more upside moving forward.
And he doesn't fit the window age-wise of this
at all.
team.
Yeah.
He'll be 34 by the time the next season starts, and I think this team needs to get younger. And I think he's also probably going to cost a lot, given how long he's going to be an impact player for you or not. He doesn't really fit age-wise.
Right, and then
more realistic from the team that you'd be coming from.
Definitely.
If they make the playoffs, one. So if they don't, that could be a team looking to blow things up. And even if they do make the playoffs and they're out of the first round, same story. So
yes,
but I agree with the Boston probably retooling around Pasternak.
Yeah, and then with Zegras, as much as I would love to add somebody that's kind of on the younger side and that could very, very just so obviously use a change in scenery, I don't know that Zegras is necessarily the kind of player that they need. Obviously, he has a lot of skill, but he's having a very hard time having any of that skill translate into actual production, especially now that he's been pushed to the wing with Leo Carlson coming in and kind of forming that 1-2 punch down the middle with Mason McTavish, and then obviously them having Ryan Strome there as a center as well. The fact that Trevor Zegras is now just basically a winger that's producing like a third line winger, basically, right? Like, and I know this
44 games this season,
yeah, and I know that the situation in Anaheim is arguably the worst in the NHL from, the coach standpoint and all the complaints that we're hearing about him from former players and then even the rumblings from the current squad. I know that that's a tough spot. I know the fact that if you are Trevor Zegras, you've had significant injuries the last couple seasons. That's been tough on you. And then also just the fact that the team has been bad for so long now that you do have to worry about that just affecting the motivation and will to play of some of the guys who have been there the longest, like Trevor Zegras has. But I just think that what we're seeing from him is that he's just kind of not quite good enough to be a top 6 NHL center, and that when he's a winger, he's not really kind of good enough to be an NHL top 6 winger either. And so that would kind of scare me if the Kraken were to go out there and spend assets to bring him in. That, and I think he's going to need a new contract soon too, and you'd kind of have to deal with all of that.
Yeah, you'd really have to believe in him, especially for an extension. And I just think the Kraken, they also need a little bit more size when they're adding it forward. We saw what Kopokok was able to do with that. Zegras is not really that guy. And I'm sorry, Julia, I've got to mention it. You know who fits our timeline? Elias Pettersson. And I've seen you preaching the gospel of Pettersson in here the whole time. Next time I see you, I will convince you to jump on the EP40 Kraken train. Julia, I'm already on that train. I think it's a risk worth taking. I'm there with you, Julia. No convincing you need to do.
It's too much money. If the Kraken are chewing up that much cap space in one player, I'm sorry. I need it to not be somebody who has the Winnie the Pooh black rain cloud hanging over their heads, or just the most Charlie Brown energy you've ever seen a professional athlete play their sport with.
I will say, if you're gonna talk about guys that seem they could desperately need a change of scenery and could have a bounce back when they get that change of scenery, I'm not sure, other than Zegras, there's a player in the NHL that needs that change more than Elias Pettersson right now.
That is true. That is true.
But I agree.
What if we meet in the middle, everybody? Brock Besser for like $7 million a year. Let's go.
He's gonna sign for more than that. My counter. I was serious. Like, okay, instead of Pettersson, you can have Brock Besser and Taylor Hall. You happy?
I would take that.
You would? Okay.
Yeah, I would. I like Pettersson looks so sad. Both like he actually looks sad, and also like he looks sad.
Yeah, no, I know. No, he is completely broken. I'm watching. You know, I've watched him recently. He is totally broken, but could be fun to fix. Doesn't work. It could be fun to fix. Could be very fun to fix.
Is the Kraken offensive system going to fix him though?
I don't know. I was going to say, I just don't know. And look, I guess if I knew, like, is he good on the wing? Because that's really where we would potentially need him to be and produce. So like, that's something to think about. And that could maybe help fix him, right? You could just kind of focus more on offense, and maybe that does help reset him. It's just, as much as we've talked about how the Kraken have been built, the team needing an identity, this, the overall organizational stuff, the fact that they're setting themselves up to make one true run to add a very significant piece. I don't know. And maybe this is, I do understand the realistic standpoint here of maybe this is all they could do. I don't know that we want the whole, kind of future leveraged position, like one key addition piece, to be the guy that we're all actively acknowledging is broken right now. Like that is the part that I'm really hung up on, because if you make this move for Pettersson and it doesn't work out, you're really stuck for a while, just because of the way the team is working. And right now, with the young guys kind of needing to take that next step, Maddie needs to take that next step, Shane needs to take that next step. Kapokako kind of needs to evolve into that next level top 6 player now that he's got the opportunity to. If you're rolling the dice on Pettersson being that kind of like still in their prime, super skilled vet, next level playmaker to take them all on that journey, I don't know why you would make that bet with somebody that is actively broken.
Players like that do not become available unless they are actively broken. The last guy like that who became available, his neck was actively broken.
Broken. I know.
Jack, you have to take a risk somewhere.
The other question, though, I would have there is, one, is Vancouver going to be willing? They've said before they're not, but would they be willing to move him in division?
And I doubt they would.
And two,
if we're talking realism, yeah.
If they do move him in division, are they going to demand a higher price? And then what does that price end up looking like if they're looking for a higher price to move him in division? So
all things to consider.
It might not be all that realistic for the Kraken specifically, just because of willingness for Vancouver. Because, I mean, from their front office perspective, they don't want that dream scenario we talked about earlier of him moving down the road or even in division, and then not only being a pain in their side, or not only, making them look dumb by breaking out, but also then making it harder for them to compete for those same playoff spots.
Yeah.
Yes, and I'm just running through all of this stuff here.
I know we've got lots of takes on both sides of this, and
Lots of
I
takes
love
on both
seeing
sides.
all of
It is
that.
fun.
But
Yeah,
I do
no,
want to
it
get
is
to the super
definitely
chat
fun.
from Dave that we've been
Right.
waiting on a while, but it seems like Dave's been involved in the conversation too. He's like, keep it going,
Yes.
so that's all
Yes.
good. But I don't get much opportunity to catch live streams, so I'm just out here tonight with you showing some love for our boys. Thank you, Dylan and RJ and chat. Thank you so much, Dave. I mean, being so active in chat, all the super chats tonight, we really do appreciate that from you, Dave, and love having you here.
Yes, definitely. And I was going to kind of save that as like a good place to probably leave it. I know that, we are past the hour mark here. I know everybody's very active in this chat around Elias Pettersson and everything there, but I do think that message from Dave is a good place to leave it. We could definitely continue this conversation around Elias Pettersson on Monday, RJ, when we record the deep dive. Feels like maybe this is the community telling us maybe what we need to dive deeply into, perhaps.
As they love to do, and they've never steered us wrong before.
We got 2 first-round picks to burn in the offseason, so you got to think about some big trades.
That is true. That is true. And Elias Pettersson could definitely, potentially be involved in something like that. So I think we should all hit pause on this conversation. Maybe get some shut eyes. It's close to 11 o'clock here on the Pacific time zone side of things. Really appreciate everybody here tonight, though. After this one, really appreciate all the great conversation. Really appreciate having Scott join us for this whole one. Make sure to check out his YouTube channel, Cheap Seats Sports.
Let everyone know where they can find you.
Yeah, if you don't already know, Cheap Seat Sports right here on YouTube. So it's every game got the R&R recap and reaction. Also, for the last 2 seasons, R&R is somewhat fitting for some other reasons as well, but
yeah. And if you like these post-game, if you are here for post-game live and you want to see people recap the game and everything, you're going to love the R&R videos. He does that after every Kraken game, usually comes out like the next morning or so.
Yeah,
you can watch that, and he does a great job breaking it down right here from this very studio, which looks really nice.
Beautiful. It is great.
Yes. Not as expensive as it probably looks. Lots of this is free from games.
People notice the bobbleheads and whatnot. Yeah.
It's a very professional set. No, it does look fantastic.
Takes years of painful Seattle fandom to get all of this. Especially
saying
this
it's well earned. It's a well earned, well appreciated.
Don't always pay money. Yeah.
Yes. There we go.
For anybody that is feeling pessimistic about where the Kraken are at, there's a whole side of Mariners things over here that, let me tell you, it could be worse.
Oh, they know. Trust me, they know. So yes, definitely. Thanks to Scott for joining us for this one. Thanks to Queen Anne Beer Hall for sponsoring, as always. Reminder: if you did miss our last awesome watch party at Queen Anne Beer Hall, we are going to be having that next watch party against Elias Pettersson's Vancouver Canucks, by the way. So we can all have this conversation in person at Queen Anne Beer Hall's Moss Bay Hall location, Wednesday, April 2nd at 7:30. Should be a fantastic time out there. I'm really looking forward to it. And yeah, I feel like this was all just cranked up to 11 for that watch party with all this Pettersson talk. Should be a lot of fun there. Appreciate everybody for the super chats this evening as well, with a very special shout out to Dave. It's great that you were able to join us live tonight, Dave, and we really appreciate all the support from you. It was very kind, very generous. That's going to do it for this ECH postgame live, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we will see you all next time.